Some of you may have heard me say the highest calling of mankind, I've often said, is private equity, but some people don't agree. And one of my former partners didn't agree with me, and he ran for governor of Virginia, and there he is, Glenn. So Glenn, how's bipartisanship now in Virginia?
Well, first of all, David, thank you for hosting today, and what a fascinating discussion. But I do think that there's a real opportunity for us as governors to embrace the idea that we're problem solvers, but to do it in a way that when we do disagree, we can do it without being disagreeable. And I think how we behave and treat one another is paramount to actually establishing maybe a different way to role model how we lead. And what I'm finding is that there are lots of places where the parties vehemently disagree, but I'm also finding lots of places where we can vehemently agree. And just this past week, we had a big gathering of education leaders across Virginia talking about K through 12 innovation and what we can do to launch choice through lab schools in partnership with colleges and universities. And what I found was that this was truly bipartisan. And so I do believe that bipartisan doesn't mean you have to agree on everything. But what we're going to try to do is find a lot of things we can agree on.
Okay, so my home state governor is Maryland, Governor Hogan. How do you govern in a state where there are more Democrats by a lot than your own party? Has that been a challenge a bit?
Well, you know, I think we're seeing there are a lot of people sitting at the table that are governing in states that have people of an opposite party that really have a lot of power. In Maryland, it happens to be, you know, nearly every elected official, every statewide elected official, nearly our entire federal delegation, and more than 70% of both houses of our legislature are of the other party. But we've been successful in getting things done for the reasons that, you know, everybody's talking about, and that is, you know, just taking the best ideas, regardless of which side of the aisle they come from, you know, and there aren't just Republican solutions or Democratic solutions, but being willing to work together to find that common ground where you can all reach agreement, and we've been pretty successful at that. So in Maryland, you know, I was reelected in 2018 in a place that doesn't normally reelect Republicans. I'm the second one in 243 years. But I think it's because people, the average voter, I think really wants to elect people that'll just get things done and that's willing to work together to get it done. And I think the voters reward you for that.
Okay. So Governor Baker, was Governor Murphy a good student in high school? And what is it like to govern as a Republican in Massachusetts, which is not a famously Republican state?
I am sure that Governor Murphy was a better student than I was.
I don't know about that.
Because there's a lot of room there between me and the top of the pile. I would agree with, you know, Governor Wolf plays an interesting hand in Pennsylvania. He's a Democrat with, I think, both a House and a Senate that is led by the Republicans. I really think that this will be a little controversial. I think if you're a governor and you don't get anything done, you don't get reelected. And you're not focused the day you walk in the door on that next election because you know you need something to talk about that you accomplished when you go before the voters again. And I have always thought that part of what makes state government interesting to me is, you know, this thing about who comes through the door. Most of the time in Washington, the people you're meeting, if you're an elected official, when someone comes through the door, is they represent something. They're getting paid to advocate for an organization or a cause. The vast majority of the people who walk in the door to see me may, in fact, run a business, may in fact be involved in a private or nonprofit, may have, you know, maybe a mayor or a community representative, but they are not a paid lobbyist most of the time. And therefore, they don't come through the door looking for 100% of whatever. And what they really want out of me is an ear and an understanding and appreciation for whatever it is that they're involved in. And I just think the dialogue and the dynamic at the state level especially makes you focus on progress, because that's how we all get judged. And I agree with everybody who said that, there are certain things that are Republican and Democrat, no question about that. But I just gave my State of the Commonwealth and talked about all the things that the Democrats in the legislature and the Republican administration got done over the course of the past 7 years. And it was a long list, and we left a ton of stuff on the floor. So I just think these jobs, by their nature and their definition, require those who have them, if they want to continue to do them, to perform. And performing isn't just stopping the other side from doing something, it's actually putting points on the board. And that's how we get judged, and I think it makes a big difference.
Okay. Governor Cox, do you have a comment?
Thank you, and I want to thank my colleagues on the stage. Some of us saw you on Meet the Press this morning, and it was wonderful to see that type of discussion. And interesting, I think, that it kind of stood out, right, in this day and age, to see a Republican and a Democrat coming together. When I was in college, we learned in our political science class that all politics is local. And I don't think that's the case anymore. It feels like all politics is national. If something happens in Virginia or Minnesota, we all get asked about it, and we all have to run legislation about it, and those types of things happen. But this idea of civility is really important. We should have this. I'm being struck, some of us had an opportunity last night. We were at the Swiss Embassy to hear from the Swiss ambassador, who spoke to us in a way I was not expecting. And some of us actually heard this from a very similar comment from Newt Gingrich, who talked to some of the Republican governors here. And it was this idea that this bipartisanship isn't just important for our country to get stuff done, but that it's actually an existential threat to the world and what's happening right now. He talked about how our nation has been looked to by the world for over 100 years to save the world from the evils that are out there. World War I, World War II, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Cold War, and at a time when authoritarians are growing across the world, when these threats are at our doorstep, we're seeing what's happening in other nations with some of our geopolitical adversaries, that this toxicity, this divisiveness, and fighting over stuff that really doesn't matter in the big scheme of things, is an existential threat, not just to our country, but to the world. And I don't know that that's something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, but I would love to hear from you all your thoughts on if you see that, this stupid fighting we're doing and how it's leaving us unprepared for the greatest challenges that are facing our planet.
Amen.
Wow, well, that's a tough question.
That was a big point, man.
That's a tougher than any question I asked.
Well, I mean, it's more of a statement, and I just agree 100% with it. And Governor Cox, you expressed it very, very well. And I've been blessed, as Governor Murphy has, to be in positions that have taken us overseas. And anytime you've represented the United States of America in whether it's Latin America or whether it's Asia or Europe, for me it was post 9/11 security issues. You understand very quickly how the other nations look to the United States of America, particular allies. And if they can't count on us, then as Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, if America does not lead the free world will not have a leader. And we cannot lead without reflecting the basic goodness of our country. And to me, that was the message last night from a foreign ally that loves the United States of America. And so, well said, Governor, well said.
I would, amen. I would
So,
echo.
There are a number of governors who are female. At the moment, I see one here. So is it true that females are better at being bipartisan than males?
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. Anything else you might want to add?
I just want to say that being elected as the first Chamorro woman in Guam was a great honor, and I helped very much. Thank you. I hold very close to my heart the sacredness of the job. And to me, at the end of the day, everything that we do, whether it's through Congress or through mayors or through local officials, it's to better the lives of our people. And that has always been my mantra, which is, what do I do to better the lives of our people? And that means working with everybody. And we just came from listening to infrastructure, and the greatest message that I took away is communication and talking to people and making sure everybody is cooperating and collating and working together. So even during the pandemic, which has been a great strain for our people also, people ask me, how do I feel? And every day, I still say to them, I love my job. I really do love my job. And it's about helping our people, whether it's in the island of Guam, or in Puerto Rico, or in the Virgin Islands, or in California. We are all here together to work stronger for the betterment of our people's lives. So,
Thank you.
yes, I do love my job, and absolutely.
Okay. So, Governor of Wisconsin, I talked to you not long ago in another forum, and it seemed like you had to veto every bill that was coming down the pike from the other political party. You're still doing that, and is that a bipartisanship gone away in Wisconsin?
Well, we try, and I try. But it is interesting and you hear it in similar situations as we have in Wisconsin, where we can't give Evers a win. And if we can't give Evers a win, in a lot of cases, we can't do the work of the people of Wisconsin. And so, yes, we try our best to be bipartisan. There's no question about that. And we have some wins, but so if the mantra of the legislature is we can't give Evers a win, we have to figure out different ways to make that happen. And that's what we have done in Wisconsin. I will continue, and I'm a moderate, I'll admit that. And so we will continue to try to have those bipartisan wins, but they're few and far between.
Okay. So other governors like to comment who haven't had a chance yet? Right here, Governor.
Yes, actually, I represent Puerto Rico. I am the governor of Puerto Rico. I served in Congress for 8 years representing Puerto Rico, and now I've been the governor for a bit more than a year.
Which job is better?
This one is much
Oh, really?
better. I agree with everybody else. This is the best job I've had, and probably the best one I'll ever have. Now, one thing I have done throughout my public life is to advocate for my constituents to be treated as their fellow American citizens in the States. It's like my mantra. And I have to say that this organization is treating me the same. It's treating me like any other governor, and I really appreciate it. So that's what I'll say.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Governor?
Governor Paulus.
Governor?
Paulus.
Chairman
Go ahead.
Paulus. Yeah.
Thank you. I was going to ask about kind of non-partisanship versus bipartisanship. So, to a lot of folks out there who aren't in this room, because we're those of us, I think everybody here is a member of one of the two main political parties. Neither party is actually very popular, so people don't really like Republican ideas, Democratic ideas. In our state, unaffiliated voters are the strong plurality. I mean, over 40%, 41% of the voters, so they outnumber both. And I think bipartisanship can almost sound conspiratorial. If Republicans and Democrats agree on us, they must really be screwing us. So I wanted to ask about kind of non-partisanship versus bipartisanship, and how I think what much of the public wants to see is more of a less partisan lens rather than just a bipartisan lens from two unpopular parties.
Comment?
Mr. Chairman?
Well, yeah, I'll take that on first because I've got a nephew who is a state senator. In fact, people ask me how my first term was so successful, what the key was, and I said have two nephews in the legislature always helps. But one of them became an independent. And so, we have an independent, we have Democrats, we have Republicans. And so, when I say bipartisanship, it really speaks to all the realm of elected officials and all those that are engaged in public service. But, that's a fundamental point. And I grew up in Arkansas when the Republican Party was the extreme minority. And I lost a few political races because we didn't have a chance of winning. And so, I fought hard for a two-party system. And I think it's a uniqueness of the history of America that we've had a strong two-party system. We've never had, beyond the two major political parties. Now, there's many parties that you see on the presidential ballot, but our history is that whenever there's a good idea, one of the major parties will absorb that. And so I'm a little bit of a defender of our two-party system, but recognizing that, I've had to run against libertarians. There's an official party in Arkansas, and that can happen. But I like the strength of the two-party system, but we've got to prove to America that we actually can get it done and that our ideas matter. Because I agree with you, Jared, there's a lot of frustration with both ideas right now, on both sides.
I'd just say that our math is similar to yours. You don't win a general election without taking a chunk of that 40%. Whether it's bipartisan or nonpartisan, I'm not sure, but it's a fair point. But I think also just folks want to see us get stuff done. I land where Asa is. I'm a Democrat. I know why. I'm at peace with that. You're a Republican. You know why. You're at peace with that. At the end of the day, I still think that's the right model. Having seen parliamentary systems and the cumbersome reality that brings, for as challenging as it may be some days, and it's pretty challenging these days, I'll take ours.
Okay, Governor.
Yeah, thank you. I love this topic, and what all the governors are talking about here is the way we think about it in Oklahoma is, and I use the saying, we want to be top 10 in everything that we do. So really, if you focus on running the state like a business, we really want the same things, whether you're Republican, Democrat, you live in rural or urban parts of our state. We want the best education for our kids. We want the best infrastructure. Let's be top 10 in bridges and road conditions. We want the best access to health care. We want the best economy and the best jobs. And so I remind, as I'm bringing the Democrats together in the legislature, let's let Washington, D.C. mess with the politics side. Let's get down to business and let's move our state forward on all these different metrics. And so, Governor Baker said it very well. I mean, the jobs of governors are to deliver better services for their citizens, run their state more efficiently and effectively, and think about the taxpayers as we're moving these things forward. And so I think when we focus on those four things, we can argue about a few of the details, but I think that's the way to bring it down from the state to the state levels. And really the states are who implements these policies. The federal government has a lot of money, and they've got some of the purse strings, but ultimately it's the states that deliver and build the roads and build the schools. And so we need more state involvements. That's why I love this organization and the camaraderie and the sharing of ideas in this room. But we say it that way. We say, hey, let's just focus on these four things. Let's not worry about the politics. Let's get down to business for Oklahomans.
Okay.
Well said.
Other
John
governors
Carney, yeah.
right here?
Yeah, I thought maybe I'd tell a few stories about the state of Delaware. It might give a window into President Biden's background. For most of President Biden's career, going back to his first election in 1970 to a local county council district. I guess half and half has been dominated by Republicans first and more recently by Democrats. But we're known for something that's called the Delaware Way. And the Delaware Way, for me, is best explained by a tradition we have on the Thursday after the election every other year, where all the candidates, the winners and the losers, gather in the lower county, which used to be very competitive, now very much a Republican county. And they'd ride together traditionally in horse-drawn carriages. And they'd come together and there'd be bands and all the high schools and everybody was represented. And at the end, there was a ceremony where all the committee chairs of the respective parties, the Democratic chair, the Republican chair, and now even the third-party chairs, come together on the stage, and they actually bury the hatchet. Take a hatchet, put it up there. Democratic chair grabs it, the Republican chair grabs it, and they put it in a box, and they bury it with sand from Dewey Beach on the Atlantic Ocean. Most Washingtonians have been there. What happens in Dewey Beach stays in Dewey Beach, I know that. And it's symbolic for sure, but what it says is the election season's over. We're Democrats and Republicans, third party for sure, but we're Delawareans first, and let's go and do the business of the state. And for so many years, legislators of both sides of the aisle took that to the work that they did. I can remember when I was lieutenant governor, if I closed my eyes and kind of muffled the voices, you couldn't tell whether somebody speaking on the floor of the Senate was a Democrat or Republican based on what they were saying. Now it's changed significantly since then. But when Senator Biden surprisingly won as a 29-year-old, not old enough to take the oath of office then until he turned 30, he beat a long-serving Republican two-term governor, 2 or 3-term United States senator. And he did it running that way. And politics in Delaware, since we're so small, we're shy of 1 million people, 1 congressional district, politics is very personal. It's much more personal than it's partisan. Governor Cox said something that I think holds true in my state more than ever, which is politics is not as local as it used to be, even in a state where it's been so personal for as long as I can remember, and certainly in the political career of our president, because everybody's whipped up on the right and the left, frankly, by what they read and see on social media. And it's really a shame, in my view. It's gotten in the way of the Delaware Way, makes it more difficult for me as governor to actually get support from my own party in the legislature. And I think it is a window into President Biden. His politics and the way he approaches it is very personal. Hard to do that on the national stage. And he did come up at a time where Delaware arguably was a Republican state, with Pete DuPont being a 2-term governor, Mike Castle following him being a 2-term governor, Mike Castle, my predecessor in the Congress, a 9-term congressman. Mike Castle lost in a primary in 2010 when he was the most popular elected official in our state. And there's lots of factors there. But I say all of that just to kind of paint a picture of a state where President Biden grew up as a politician and what he brings to the job every day, which is that kind of personal approach to politics where getting things done is more important than anything else.
Does the hatchet thing still happen?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Hatchets thing still happens.
so the other question
When I was sworn in as a member of Congress, I felt like they handed out hatchets to everybody.
So,
has anybody refused to bury the hatchet?
Not that I'm aware of. Now,
Wow.
there was a very contentious Senate campaign within the last 10 years. I don't remember the exact election. But it's not just burying the hatchet. You have to ride in the horse-drawn carriage with the person that beat you or you beat, right? That's hard to do.
Yes.
2 days after the election.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Wow.
And I remember one of those successful candidates refused to ride in the carriage with the other one, walked alongside of the carriage, and I won't mention any names about that.
That's so great.
Well, there's a long tradition of that in the United States, too. When John Adams was defeated by Thomas Jefferson, he refused to go to the inauguration and left town before Jefferson was sworn in. So it's been going on for a long time. I think do other governors want to say anything before we wrap up? Anybody else? Let me just take the privilege of the moderator to say thank you for a terrific conversation. Thank you all for joining. I would like to remind you that when President Kennedy wrote his famous book, Profiles in Courage, it was about bipartisanship because it was really about members of Congress taking votes that were politically difficult for them, and really they were ones that really required them to be more bipartisan than they would otherwise have been. I hope that we can have another book on Profiles in Courage in the not-too-distant future with similar examples that are occurring in Washington. There are some examples of that from time to time. And just close with reminding what everybody said, what President Kennedy said at the end of his inaugural address, which was, "The good conscience our only sure reward. With history the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own." So I like to feel that bipartisanship is God's work on earth, and I hope all of you will continue to do what you're doing in bipartisanship ways. And governors, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.